Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Suffer City. Jason here at Suffer City, talking about one of the most common interferences in your fitness game. It's that back pain, whether it's chronic or whether it's an injury or something that just happened this afternoon. We can help you correct it right here, right now. Let's check it out. So when we experience back pain, we have to look at that as the car accident that happened, right? That's the crisis site. That's where we're feeling the most discomfort. But how many of us pay attention to what led to that? Because much like a car accident, the accident didn't just happen at the intersection or at the site. It happened long before that when the driver wasn't paying attention, the driver was looking around, the driver's texting, and then we get the car accident. That's what we're going to talk about today, is how to reduce the opportunity of you ever having back discomfort again. So we think about back pain, of course, we think about our back. We want to protect our back, tend to our back, give our back all the attention that we think it needs. But the fact is, that's likely more counterproductive for you than doing what I'm going to show you here today, which is paying attention to the hips, baby. That's right. As my man Chubbs always says, it's all in the hips. So today we're going to discuss, break down for you what exactly is going on in the hips that lead to the back pain, how to attend to it and loosen up and give some ease of movement in the hips to loosen up your back and ultimately get rid of the pain that you're feeling. Let's take a look at that. So to start, we got to think about what we're doing every day. Chances are you sit down from time to time. You drive, you're at the desk, you're eating lunch, whatever you're doing, we're oftentimes sitting down. So we got to correct for that, because what's happening when we're sitting down? About how our hips get tight in the first place. Well, look at what I'm doing here. Chances are you do this all the time. Whether you're driving in your car, sitting at the computer, eating food, we can do just about anything in this position. But what you don't realize what's happening is there is a lot of flexion. Flexion happening in these muscles. These are your hip flexors, your psoas muscles, even the quadriceps, and a lot of the connective tissue that connects the lower extremity into your hip system. They're actually contracting in this moment. So you can think about these hips and all the hip system as regularly in contraction, which teaches it how to do what? Be tight and contract. So if you're constantly in a state of contraction here, when you go to stand up, you're gonna feel the tightness. Now what's that tightness gonna do? That tightness is gonna pull our body forward. Now the problem here is that you've got a brain. That's probably the biggest problem we have, is our brain from time to time. But the chances are our brain wants to adjust and correct for this feeling. So what our brain is gonna do is use our balancing mechanisms to correct for that posture, to bring us upright so we can see the world as it's meant to be seen. Now, what's happening there is you're not noticing it, but unconsciously your brain is sending signals down your spine to start firing these back muscles. So those back muscles are gonna pull against the hips to bring you upright. Now when we do that again and again and again, eventually the hips get tighter, the back pulls. The hips get tighter, the back pulls. And it becomes this tug of war between the front side of our body and the back side until eventually we go to stand up and boom, we experience the crisis. So for starters, what we could do is sit less. If you're able to sit less, sit less. Me personally, I like to sit at my desk and do work. I've tried the standing desk and walking on a treadmill, and the fact is I can't concentrate my energy to what I need to if I'm doing 3 or 4 different things at the same time. So I sit pretty regularly, but here's what I also do regularly to ensure my hips aren't getting too tight. So again, here we are in the sitting position, doing anything we do all the time, every time. Now what I'll just do is take a little bit of a break. What I want to do is open up my hips here. So I'm simply gonna take this lunge position. So what we're aiming for here is getting some attention in the front side of this hip right here. So as I lean into this, I have to pull all this musculature and all of this connective tissue out of that hip and start pulling and lengthening until I even start to feel some stretch in my lower abdomen. And I'm gonna sit here for maybe 1 or 2 minutes and just allowing that stretch to pull. What this is also doing is allowing my back to relax. So I want to feel that as much as I can. Maybe I'll spend a minute, sometimes 2 minutes, depending upon how tight I am. And I'll go to the other side as well. And this can be done anywhere. In fact, if I'm at a grocery store and I'm standing in line for longer than I want, you're going to see this weird guy taking this stretching position on the ground in the grocery store. But I tell you what, it beats back pain any day. And keep your body feeling as loose and with as much ease of movement as possible. So again, this is just a basic runner's lunge stretch. Call it what you want, but what you're aiming to do is pull and get some length in these hips. All right, so again, I'll spend some time here breathing. And the breathing is important because what you're feeling tight in here is actual stuff. Right, there's real stuff in there, and it's causing these adhesions in the muscles. And in order to get that stuff out, well, we got to exhaust it out. So this first line of defense is start organizing our hips in a manner that will reduce pressure or reduce that tug of war effect that our back is fighting. So that's a good way just to get a linear effect out of our hips. And what I mean by linear is just forward and back. But the chances are you also want to mobilize a little bit and have some diversity or mobility within the hip as well. So how do we do that? So I'll take about a minute doing something like I just showed you. And what I'm going to show you here, it can be done on the ground, it can be done on an elevated platform like I'm demonstrating here, but this is called a pigeon pose. And all we're going to do is take my foot up. I'm going to start to notice how my knee opens up in this butterfly manner, getting some more multi-directional mobility through the hip. And I could spend, now you could tell I'm pretty tight in my hip here. So I could spend up to a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, getting some length. And what I want to do is take my spine and extend it out and over this leg to start pulling and opening up the hip system from a more lateral or a mobile perspective as opposed to just linear. So I'll spend another 1, maybe 2 minutes on this, switch legs, do the same thing. Now those are 2 simple, self-applicable ways for you to start reducing some of your back discomfort, whether it's tightness, stiffness, or actual restriction of movement, or worst case scenario, you're feeling pain. Tell you what, you start doing this maybe once, twice a day, 5 to 10 minutes per time. Hey, in 2 weeks, you're gonna be wondering where that back pain went. So we just went over some very easily applicable things you could do for yourself. Don't require any tools, nothing other than a little bit of time and intention, because I bet your intention is to not have your back hurt, right? So you gotta have the intention, set the time, and take a little bit of that time towards those first movements I just showed you. Now let's say you're still experiencing, maybe you have a real crisis going on with that lower back. Let's talk about some tools you can now use to apply a different kind and even more pressure or different kinds of stimulus to give us even better corrections, long-term corrections for how our back could feel. So the first one is our foam roller. You've probably seen this 1,000 times, and chances are you just don't know exactly how to use it. So let me show you 1 or 2 things you could do with this to start reducing some pressure in the back, start opening up your hips a little bit. Let's look at it. First thing we're gonna do is try to shut down some of the activity in the lower back. Now, a lot of us will do this when we feel our lower back because, hey, this does feel good. It's pressure, it's relieving some of the pain, and it's doing so because it's restricting a lot of the blood flow to that back. As I said, this is sort of the crisis site, the intersection where the accident is experienced, right? So let's go ahead and clear that out a little bit, start allowing some fresh oxygenated blood to get in there. But this is also activating your core. For a lot of us who experience back pain, it's actually energy not able to move itself into our abdominal region, and so rather it just moves towards a path of least resistance into our mid-back. So as you see me sitting here, I'm not gonna sit here passive. I'm gonna take my hips, tilt them, bring some energy into my core, so now I'm doing 2 things at once. Shutting down activity in the lower mid-back and creating activity in my six-pack. Now just the time I've been sitting here talking to you, I could already feel my abs catching fire. So if you wanna amplify this effect to bring even more energy to the core, you can just do these hip lifts, right? Tilt the pelvis and bring it right back down. Notice the rest of my body stays static. All I do is lift through the hips and bring them right back down. I tell you, I feel my abs catching fire, level 10 fire already. Great start point right here to do those 2 things, shut down the lower back, bring activity into the midsection. All right, so we've gone over that level 1 application. It's putting a little bit of pressure on the mid-back, shuts down that mid-back while activating what we want to activate, that abdominal core. So let's talk about now how to put some application onto the hips to reduce tightness and stiffness in the hips, which is likely causing that back pain or that back injury. First thing we're gonna do is just go ahead and find ourselves basically just laying on this thing. Now I'm gonna just go ahead and lay on it on my thigh, but I'll go ahead and really start to bring all my weight into that point and start to push pressure all the way up into the hip joint, in fact. And we'll find some pretty sensitive points here just by doing that. And as it's sensitive, you wanna hang out there for a little bit, breathe in, breathe out, allow that sensitivity to sort of dissipate. And what that is that's actually those muscular adhesions starting to break apart, break down, and releasing a lot of the metabolic waste product causing it. So I'll just kind of hang out here for a little bit, and over time start getting a little bit more movement. And if we want, we could roll all around the quadricep up into the hip. But you want to pay special attention onto the hip, and you'll start to see me roll a little bit to my right. And what I'm doing here is moving this pressure off the front side, right into the side of my hip here, all the way up in this little intersection of muscles. All right, I'll talk about this intersection of muscles here in a second. But the big focus is getting as much of your body weight as you can onto the point of application where you're applying the pressure of the foam roller into your body. You want as much weight as possible and just hang out, and when you find those very, very sensitive points, hang out there, breathe, and let this be the pain you're willing to deal with, because this is much better than the back pain you're probably already dealing with. So when I'm on my side, what I'm aiming to affect is this little trifecta of muscles here. You have what's called a TFL, or a tensor fasciae latae, which attaches in here, along with your glute and your hip flexors. So there's all these different muscles all combining on this tiny little part of your body, or a little tiny part of your hip. You apply pressure here and experience a dramatic reduction of tightness and stiffness in your lower back as a result of loosening up this section of the hip. So the last thing we could do here with this foam roller is take it to the inner thigh, because what happens is, as well, is our thighs our hips rather, will start to bow inwards. We're doing a lot of linear moving, a lot of this types of moving, or our hips are going to adapt to that style of moving. They'll start to cramp and foil inwards, in fact. So what I want to do, take this foam roller right up into the upper grundle of my body here, right up into the upper thigh, and I'm gonna find that point again where it is nearly agonizing, and then I hang out there. And what's happening is I'm letting my thigh bone, all of the femur, all the way up into that hip socket joint. I'm allowing it to elevate and move outward away from that hip to open up some greater pathways here. And all we do is hang out here for a little bit, allowing all of our weight again to be right on this point of application as we allow those hips to open up. Again, another minute, 2 minutes here, breathing in, breathing out is all you're gonna need. Get each side of the body, and then you'll be ready to move on. Now finally, let's take a look at our third level of treatment here, where we're caring for back pain, also known as treating the hips a little bit. We have what's called voodoo floss here. All right, and it is magical. It is quite voodoo, if you ask me. And all we're gonna do is apply it to my upper thigh. What's great again here, all the things I'm showing you today, you could do on your own. This is all self-care, all right? And to me, self-care is the future of healthcare. So I'm gonna get this band, I'm gonna apply some good pressure. We could have, you know, if you get anywhere from 0 to 100% stretch on these things, you wanna be pretty high, maybe 70%, maybe 80% stretch on these bands, way up into the grundle. Now, if you're at all concerned about shutting off this femoral artery, hey, a little bit of blood restriction is gonna happen here, but the deal is, you got plenty of time before it becomes a real issue. So we'll go ahead, and I'm gonna apply some good pressure here. And in most cases, in fact, I would go down my entire leg, but for demonstrative purposes here, I'll just go ahead and get a good half application down the leg, point as best I can here. Ugh. Boom. And now we've got a dramatic amount of restriction, blood flow restriction in here. Now what is this doing? This is hypercompression. We're starting to create a little bit of an emergency right up into the upper or lower hip and the upper thigh. Now that emergency is requiring a lot of physiological activity to come rush into this site to see what's going on. What they're gonna find out is, I probably got a lot of metabolic waste in here that needs to be exhausted out. So that's gonna be happening all the while. I'll go back into that first stretch position. So now I got one method of treatment with the application of the voodoo floss, a second method of treatment with a good stretch, good elastic pull through the upper thigh, and then we're gonna apply some percussion or some vibration here. I got this hypervolt. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this puppy on. Now this is oftentimes best when applied by a third party, so somebody else, but I'll go ahead and do some self-application here. Lifting up, again, you want us to be long through the hips, start really applying aggressively. And again, you're gonna spend anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes here, just kind of working a lot of this tightness and stiffness out. Being very mindful to exhale on the regular, because this stuff has to get out of your body. Some of you are gonna start sweating, all right? And especially when you start to notice yourself sweating, let the exhales happen, because that's your body trying to get rid of what's causing your discomfort. Okay, so we've gone over a couple of methods for you to begin improving that back discomfort today. And again, as you've realized, the chances are the car accident of back pain likely happened way farther down the road than you think, a lot farther down the road. And you've got to start attending to those parts of the body that lead to these crisis sites, such as back pain, back discomfort, or even back injuries. You could use the basic stretch method I showed you. Fantastic. You can do that anywhere, anytime. You don't need a whole lot to do it. You could use some of these tools we're using, the roller, the voodoo floss, if you've got a hypervolt as well. These are wonderfully tools, especially when applied in the proper manner. So I want to encourage you to start taking control of yourself, take control of your health. Use these self-care applications to start getting your back and your whole body well again. Again, this is Jason here at Suffer City. Hope you're able to take something away from this to integrate into your daily life to bring a little better quality of what it's like to be you. Until next time, go be great.